Hello, everyone.
Yes.
The World News, where we talk about green energy, electric vehicles, and the stock market. Um, we have kind of a spooky theme going on with our software today. I don't know if that'll really add much to the learning
Yeah.
or the education of the show today, but it is there.
And
So,
we didn't have anything to do with that. It just sort of did it by itself. So
well, anyways, you know,
hi, I'm Bill,
it's
by the way. So
yeah, yeah. Hey, Bill. Anyways, we'll go ahead and we'll get started. Let's start today with when joint ventures fall apart. And this
yeah.
is kind of interesting article coming from First Post. And this is, something that's a little bit different. When joint ventures fall apart, Honda and GM will not co-develop cheaper EVs, scrap their partnership. Now, GM's got the Bolt, and they got a couple other EVs,
All right.
but Honda doesn't really have one currently. They had that one a few years ago that
All
they
right.
discontinued in 2019. They got like an 80-mile range, but they really haven't done much in EVs. And you would think that Honda would kind of be all over some kind of opportunity here to get something rolling. And in my mind, both of these need this. I haven't really looked at this article. Do you have any thoughts about this?
Honda has not had since the EV Plus, which I think is the car you're referring to, which was a huge success when they rolled out the original California mandate in 1998. And
Wow.
after the EV1, the Honda EV Plus was probably the most successful of that small batch of electric cars that were required under California's mandate system. That car got, along with the EV1, got scrapped once they strangled the mandate and put it into a coma. So they came up, and to be fair, they actually brought the very first commercially consumer available hybrid to the United States in the form of the Honda Insight, one of which I
Right.
actually owned for about a decade. But since then, they've tried to introduce hybrids. They just haven't had the kind of luck that, the kind of success that Toyota had with the Prius and has had with, continues to have with the Prius. So that they are still lagging behind. And I guess they and GM both figured they were relying early on. They were relying on each other for help with fuel cell vehicles. So the first two companies to really introduce fuel cell vehicles for the consumer market, again, mostly in California, were Honda and GM. So it was sort of natural. Well, let's help each other with this battery electric car thing, since they were in fact the leaders back 20 years ago. Um, but obviously, what's happened since then is GM has been running into some headway with or headwinds, maybe the better way to describe it, with the UAW strike. The cost of trying to get all of these bits and pieces together, and I guess they both figured it's just not worth our while to cooperate at this point in time. So they called off the partnership. In the meantime, however, Honda has at the Tokyo Auto Show that's taking place in Tokyo right now, they have introduced a really attractive all-electric Prelude. If you'll remember
Oh,
back
nice.
20 years ago, whenever it was, they
Yeah.
had this beautiful little sports car called the Prelude, and they have now introduced an all-electric version of that as a concept car. Whether it'll make production or not, they do have an electric car they've shown, but it hasn't hit showrooms or dealerships or anything like that. So Honda's playing a lot of catch up here. Not As a matter of fact, basically, you remember when when nobody knew who Hyundai was, he thought, oh, isn't
Right.
that Honda? Right? Well, now, of
The
course, one of
shipbuilder.
the leaders in the whole EV industry, not
Right.
far behind Tesla and BYD, is that Hyundai Kia. We've got, we got a fair number of people here in the Omaha area that drive them and love them. And dealerships, locally here, a few miles from us that carry the cars. I think it was the economics of the situation that just finally got them to say, look, let's call this thing off. It just isn't the right time for whatever all of the reasons are that made sense.
When I was down in Florida last week, I saw all kinds of like ID.4s from Volkswagen. I saw the
Mhm.
EV6 from Kia. I mean, I'd
Mhm.
see them in all in the kind of the same place. Everywhere I went, I was seeing, more than I saw lots of Teslas, obviously, but
Yeah,
when you're in Omaha, you occasionally see an electric vehicle.
right.
In Florida, I was seeing lots of them, especially around the tennis tournament. I saw lots of electric Mercedes, lots of electric, I mean,
Yeah.
obviously Teslas, but there was quite a few that I was seeing, and it was really, quite nice to get to see some of the vehicles we talk about because we don't really see them, here in
Here is
Nebraska.
here is a really strange coincidence that happened yesterday. I went up to the north side of Omaha to pick up some things to do some experimentation, my mushroom experimentations, to a
Mhm.
feed store up there. So I took 680 up, and then I brought 680 back. As I was just after getting on 680, I get passed by not one, not two, but three Teslas right in a row passing me. Though, wow, that's unusual to see three of them in a row, zooming past me. So they are getting around. I don't know
Yeah.
whether that was some dealership that was moving cars or whatever it was, but it's unusual. You don't often
Yeah,
see.
it is in this part of the country, that's for sure.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
it was interesting. Honda says that they intend to sell only electric vehicles by 2040. Now that's, 16 years from now in car years.
yeah,
And, that it's very interesting to see, where they're gonna, run with that. But anyways, the next thing I want to talk about, though, is something a little different. And this one is we're going to talk about Tesla's deal. And this is kind of a weird situation. So, Tesla Inc. has faced a growing wave of concern and customer complaints related to range performance in their electric cars,
yeah,
reminiscent of the Dieselgate scandal that rocked Volkswagen in 2015. A recent report revealed that the company had allegedly set up secret teams to address customer complaints about their EVs' range issues, about the accuracy of their advertised battery ranges, and customer service practices. This is kind of interesting because I know with my phone, depending on how many apps I have open on my phone, determines a little bit of how long the battery lasts. If I'm running GPS on the phone and running Spotify and a lot of other things, my battery on my phone doesn't last nearly as
yeah,
long as it does. If I don't run those apps, my phone will last for like a day and a half,
yeah.
you know.
Well,
Mm.
the interesting with the sort of the catalyst for this thing is that Edmunds, the guys that do car reviews and
Mhm.
have an online, source where you can buy and sell cars and things like that. They've tested. They get a hold of a car, a Tesla car, and then they test it for all the different things. And one of those tests always tends to be, what's the range we can get out of it? We fill it up, we drive it, on the same route and the same basic temperature, weather conditions, and how far does it go? And apparently, they reporting that not once in all of the tests of all of the models that they've had has a Tesla ever reached the mileage that Tesla claims to the EPA, because EPA doesn't run these tests. The car makers run the tests and then certify those to the federal government. Well,
Mhm.
apparently Tesla has been like Volkswagen, very possibly, allegedly. We'll
Yeah.
cover our derrieres here.
My
Allegedly,
experience driving a Model 3 here in Nebraska, driving back and forth to Lincoln, has been that it doesn't get anywhere near the range, but that's also because the speed limit's really high.
you're
And
dealing with cars doing 80 and 85 miles an hour.
yeah, but I've heard Musk talk about this, and he's like, "Hey, if you're driving the car 30 miles per hour, you get about 50% more range than what we
Yeah,
advertise." And and part of that is you don't have a transmission system with gearing to
yeah,
affect that. And I don't know. You'd think there'd be something that would affect that, but it is kind of an interesting thing. One of the key concerns raised in the report is the alleged silencing of customer complaints regarding range issues. Tesla's service team reportedly canceled appointments for customers who complain about range problems, effectively minimizing the number of customer complaints and service center visits. There's even a specialized team known as the diversion team in Las Vegas responsible for canceling as many range-related appointments as possible to alleviate range anxiety and reduce service center complaints. Employees in this office reportedly celebrated their success in canceling appointments, which saved the company approximately $1,000 per diversion. Despite these allegations, Tesla has not provided any clarification. That's
Yeah.
kind of interesting to
So, so, so the one guy is claiming, I guess he's a Tesla bear, so he basically, I guess he shorts the company when the opportunity presents itself.
mhm.
He's saying, oh, this could be, Tesla's Dieselgate, which,
Yeah.
you know, you
Well,
know,
might make that'd be a good thing to put out there if you're about to short the stock, that's for sure.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, let's see. And of course that's comparing to Volkswagen in 2015 when the company was found to have manipulated emissions data in its diesel engines to meet regulatory standards during testing. Yeah, it does have some of that flair, but who knows? It's I think it's a little bit of how somebody drives the car, i-
Oh,
in my
definitely.
opinion.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah. I'll get one mileage. I said I went up to the north side of Omaha, and I took most of that was on 680, having to keep up with cars doing 65, 70, 80 miles an hour. And of course, my range suffered as a result. But then when I came back, I got off on, you'll know where this is, on Pacific Street, and went
mhm.
over to Trader Joe's and bought some things, and then came back, the slow way down 96, which was just basically slow, 35 mile an hour, 45 mile an hour stop and go. And the range was much better. So, it is. Depends on where you're driving and how hard your, foot's weighing on that accelerator.
Well, let's talk next about Chevron and Exxon. So
Yeah.
Chevron and Exxon have had a few mega deals in the oil business, and to show it, they still believe that oil is going to be necessary for a long period of time, and despite political pressures to go green. Now, I do have a little bit of a different opinion on this, but it's one of the things is right now oil fields are selling at a huge discount because nobody wants to finance them. So people who
Yeah.
have the cash to buy
Yeah.
them can
Yeah.
pick
There's
them
an
up.
article that I posted that has a reference to the fact that refineries can't get funding because of the growing pressure to, stop funding fossil fuels and climate change. So,
Yeah. So, anyways, Chevron on Monday agreed to a $53 billion all stock deal to buy Hess, which
mhm,
is a North Dakota based company.
right.
And they also have a 30% stake in a massive oil field offshore of Guyana, considered to be one of the most significant oil discoveries of the past decade. Hess also has considerable oil and gas assets in the U.S., including the Bakken area of western North Dakota, eastern Montana, and southern Saskatchewan. And then Chevron did a $65 billion deal,
Yeah. For Pioneer. Yeah.
yeah, for Pioneer to buy up 850,000 acres of oil and gas in the Permian Basin. And like I said, I get kind of where they're coming from. Some of it they did a stock trade, and the other they did, I'm sure they did some cash in there as well. But it's something that they're capable of doing, and it's a problem in the with the oil industry right now is that the valuations have gone down, and so you know it's an interesting move, but it's gonna there's gonna be consolidation in those markets.
Yeah. And the thing is that you're seeing now, UN reports, I think, put this out that we're going to see this phenomenon called peak oil
Mhm.
by 2030. And I think now historically, I mean, was personally acquainted with one of the gentlemen who actually, was an advocate of that concept of peak oil, and having been, in the oil industry all his life. And that sort of went away. This was like the early 2000s time frame that this came up, and people were talking about rapidly approaching peak oil. And of course, then everybody was sort of poo-pooing that, because all of a sudden, about the same time that's sentiment is being expressed, the oil companies are developing fracking,
Hmm.
right? Which meant that they could push and extract more oil out of fields that previously were not economical to try to exploit. And so the whole idea of peak oil kind of went away, and unfortunately, the gentleman that was one of the advocates of trying to rein that in early, passed away prematurely, as I think. But anyway, so now we're back here in the early part of the 2020s with this talk being revived again, but not so much from the point of view of we're going to run out of oil, but from the fact that not, the production of oil is going to peak, and it's going to be difficult to get, but that the demand for oil is going to be impacted by various things, political pressures, for example, economics we talked about, where they can't get funding from banks. And of course, then you've got, the rise of alternative forms of energy to power our cars, primarily, at this point, electric, possibly at some point, hydrogen as a supplement. So that's what I think is that they're talking about. We're going to see this peak oil demand begin to taper off in 2030.
A fair amount of your investments in green energy products are coming from oil companies, and a lot of that is because they want to remain as energy companies, and they're worried about that. I interestingly had a conversation this week about with a private equity group about manufacturing medical products in the UAE,
Yeah,
and they wanted to know if we would consider manufacturing there. And it's like, well, if they're going to put up the money, we're good with that. But
yeah,
it's interesting to see. Now, the UAE isn't a country that has, uh, or at least doesn't have a lot of oil revenue. They rely mainly on business and the fact
yeah.
that
They do have
their
some
world
natural
trading.
gas, don't they?
I'm sure they do.
Also, natural gas.
I'm sure they do have some, but the country doesn't rely
Yeah,
on
it's
on
much
the
more
oil and
sort of
gas like the
business
rest of the
focused.
Arabian Peninsula.
Yeah,
Yeah. And it's kind of interesting to see where those conversations are going. Because you look at even in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, they're having Lucid start manufacturing cars there, which is
they're not
really good
the
sign.
only one. There's a new company, Indian Steel Company, has
Mhm.
just announced that they're going to begin manufacturing steel in Saudi Arabia.
Wow.
So they're, I mean, the Saudis are moving fairly fast, I think, in the scope of things to quickly diversify their income, or
Nice.
their sources of revenue, which has obviously been primarily oil and gas.
Yeah. But it's interesting because there's this other article from New Republic about fossil fuel demand is predicted to peak by 2030, and the oil
Yeah,
giants are betting against it. I'm not so sure that I would really say that's betting against it. They're buying, in my opinion, they're buying up resources at a discount.
yeah,
And so I think that if you're getting into a situation where the price of gas starts falling, then you know eh, they've got to figure out how they can be in there and be more competitive. But on
yeah.
the flip side, if it becomes too expensive to drill, then maybe gas will keep going up in price. But you would think as demand for gas goes down, the price should go down as well.
Yeah,
So
the interesting thing I saw an article, and but somebody talking about it's inevitable that the price of oil is going to go to $200 a barrel,
yeah.
double, what it is right now.
It's funny how they always use the term fossil fuels. There was something that the oil industry came up with. It was a term somebody came up with to make it sound like we were going to run out of oil. And they don't really come from dinosaurs, but that was the story, was that oil was
It comes
coming
from
from dead dinosaurs.
plankton,
Yeah,
ancient, long ago plankton.
yeah, but it's interesting to see, you know, some of the concept. All right, well, we got you
Well, you
wanted to
got an
talk
oil Sinclair, right? What was their symbol?
the dinosaur. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Brontosaurus.
I'm just saying this because people had started calling fossil fuels to
Right.
make it seem like they were more
Well, because it's
rare than
because they
they
be
are.
yeah, because it comes from area where these old ancient rocks where we were digging up fossils that have been dead and gone for millions of years. I mean, you can go into coal mines and
Hmm.
you can actually find leaf, where that matter, most of the matter had been converted and over into pure carbon. But there were areas that didn't happen. Um, some of the guys were, I used to live in West Virginia, and the people I knew were coal miners, and so they would tell me that you get in there and you could get tree stumps and all kinds of stuff that was buried in the coal. So
Interesting.
yeah.
Interesting. All right, so you want to talk about the politics of climate change or the lack of politics of climate change.
There's two articles that I came across today. I thought this is really a strange juxtaposition of views here. So the one
Mhm.
article talks about how that 49% of Americans polled. Now, who they polled and the methodology and all that, I don't know, but 49% of Americans don't believe that climate change is a problem, is their problem.
Okay.
Not some, not something that affects them, not something they have to worry about, have to deal with. But interestingly, the other article from another source completely said that what was the exact number here? 80% of Americans polled, and I think this was I forget, it was a major polling company, I think, that did this, said that 80% of Americans are frustrated by the politics of climate change. Now, what those questions are, what that means, does that mean that 80% of Americans are concerned about climate change and want all this climate denial stuff that's taking place? For give you an example, the guy that just became the Speaker of the House, the Republican from Louisiana, is a known climate, change denier. So is it just the two poles saying we're both frustrated
You
with,
know, one of my tennis friends has
this
the
argument
same
that's
name.
going on?
One of my tennis friends has the same name, so I sent him a congratulatory, text, and he said I was the sixth person to congratulate him yesterday on becoming Speaker of the House.
Last name Johnson, huh?
Yeah, Mike Johnson. Yeah, it's like wow. Yeah. So,
uh,
yeah, anyways, and
well,
he
he
said
wanted,
they kept coming in.
yeah, and of course the joking has been going around that he wants Lauren Boebert to give him a hand
Hmm.
with his
Interesting.
Johnson.
Oh, right, right.
Okay, we're getting a little racy, a little blue here.
Yeah, that might be a
Sorry,
little much
audience.
for electric vehicle world. Um, but anyways, um, I saw this interesting article today. It said that 92% of single people would prefer to date somebody who's been to therapy. No, just like, well, that's an easy problem. Just go to therapy as a first date.
Sure,
You
yeah,
know, and I just like, who came up with a statistic like that? I
yes.
mean, oh yeah, it was probably mentally ill people wants to date somebody who also goes to therapy.
Speed dating, going from therapist to therapist to therapist, right?
The therapist could tell you if you're a good match or you need to get away from them. Yeah, yeah. But
Oh
it
yeah,
is interesting to see some of these, statistics. But it is interesting because when you go from political party to political party, it's not that you agree or disagree on a topic. It is that you consider a topic to be irrelevant. So, like, we talk about climate change and things like that. Republicans, for the most part, consider it to be an irrelevant topic. It's not
Right.
necessarily that they disagree with it; they don't consider it to be important.
Right.
Okay, it's just like transgender rights. The right does not consider that to be something worth discussing,
Right.
and the right wants to talk about, um, you know, defense and finance and things like that, which the left tends to not want to deal with, except oddly when it comes to some of the stuff in the current climate, which we won't discuss.
Yeah.
But
We will not
but
go
it,
there
but
on
but
any
it is but it's
moral
very interesting. And in the United States, the political gulf is not what people think. It is you have completely different opinions of what's important.
what's important to me. Right.
And that is the big difference between the two political parties, because as people, we don't, like I've said before, none of us want to smell pollution. We none of us want polluted rivers and stuff like that. Of course, we live where we have dirty rivers without pollution.
Well, yeah,
But
we have a governor whose hog farms have contaminated the groundwater with nitrates.
yeah, but you know what I mean. I mean, well, the Missouri and the Mississippi were dirty to start with. You didn't
Yeah.
need anything special to make them dirty. But I'm just saying that it is different to see where people stand on a lot of these things. And I think that the change to green energy is going to happen whether people believe it's important or not.
Well,
And it's happening through
yeah,
policy.
and Bill Ford just made that comment. That unfortunately the electric vehicle thing has become politicized. Shouldn't be. Should never. Who cares what? If you can get from A to B and you can do it cheaper and more fun, why should that be a political issue? Rather than you have to stand and smell this, gas that may have come from America or may have come from somewhere, from people that don't particularly like us politically. So, you know,
On LinkedIn this morning, I saw somebody congratulating Mary Barra on being named the third most powerful woman in
yeah.
business. And then one of the first articles or things was somebody saying, get rid of all this EV crap because I've been selling cars for 40 years and nobody I know wants this crap and you're going to ruin GM. And my worry is that the big three are going to get buried because they're not implementing. And this is the thing, they keep picking other than the Ford F-150 and the Mach-E, for the most part, the U.S. car makers have decided, let's see how ugly we can make an EV so it doesn't hurt our gas-powered cars. I mean,
Oh, yeah, and in that respect, of course, little tiny car company that came from nowhere, is now
yeah,
one of the dominant, forces in the industry. And what they don't realize is that the Chinese are going to eat their lunch if they don't keep up.
no, they're
And
doing it. They're proving
I'm
it
not
in
the
Europe.
only one saying that.
Yeah. We had an interesting article about how Rivian won some road rally, but what
Yeah.
they didn't ever address in the article, because I read the article and I wanted to talk about it today, they never addressed how they charge the Rivian trucks.
Well, that's one. Of
They
course,
left that out of there. I'm like, were they switching batteries? What did they
well,
do?
depended on how long the course was. Yeah, that's kind of okay. How did fill us in some of the details? That was written obviously by whoever the reporter was that is not all that into electric vehicles, right? I mean,
No, that really was something I was really curious about because Rivian trucks do have good range.
so get on the phone and ask one of those ladies. Tell us how you did it.
Yeah.
That's
Oh man.
that's what was interesting. Not only was it the Rivian that won, and the first time an electric vehicle has won the Rebel Rally, but that in fact the Rebel Rally is an all-woman rally, right?
Oh, I
Um,
didn't realize that.
oh yeah, that was when I saw that's all I have to report on this story. Not
Oh,
only was
that's
the
pretty cool.
first electric vehicle, but these are all women that participated, and that they had three. I think there were three Rivians. One of them was a team sponsored, I think, and the other one were private, vehicles. But again, you're right. They don't explain, the mechanics of which would have been nice to see how'd you guys do it? Did you
Well,
have,
now that you tell me that, now it makes more sense. Because if they
yeah,
were stopping for snacks every 30 minutes, they'd have time to charge the
yeah.
vehicle.
It depends on, the course. The course was across. This was an off-road course. This was not racing through the English countryside, right?
No,
This was
no,
an
I
off-road
understand it.
course.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I don't know if my wife could ever have gone more than about 30 miles and needing to stop at a gas station for something, you
Oh,
know.
ouch. I'm not going to go there. Hands off.
Yeah, but anyways, well, we managed to cover all of our topics for today,
Good.
Bill.
Oh,
We
there's
had a
lots
pretty long
more.
show.
Well, I got to
There's
tell you,
always more.
I've got another 80 or 90 stories to add. It's been crazy this week. So,
Well, it's been interesting to see our spooky designs here today. So, anyways, we'll be
yeah,
back on. You'll be
have
back with me on Halloween. So,
oh, yeah, absolutely. Should I wear a costume? Nah.
well, we have to give that some thought, right? I can guarantee you, I'm going to appropriate somebody's culture if I do.
Yeah, yeah.
So, anyways, all right. Let's everybody. Thanks for listening in. If you enjoy.